Hey, everybody. Thanks for joining us again for another exciting episode of the Alex Hayes podcast. I am your host, Alex Hayes. Joining me today is my special guest, Erik Knight. Erik is a multiple founder, multiple business exit owner. He is the owner of Prescott Executive Offices here in Prescott, Arizona. He is also a founder of a startup called Nexcell, which is an AI-enabled radio equipment manufacturer, and he is here today to share some wisdom and insights about how his entrepreneurial journey has taken its shape and its form, and how he has started and exited multiple businesses at this point in his career. And we are super excited to have him with us today. So, Erik, thanks so much for
Wow.
being here.
Thank you. Wow. That makes it sound bigger than it is when it's really just all the mistakes I've made through the years. So I appreciate it. This is exciting. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, no, my pleasure. Thanks again for your time. So let's go back. I want to go a little bit back farther than your entrepreneurial journey for just a moment. Who was Erik Knight in high school?
Wow, that's a long time ago. You're really making me work here. So I was a guy who worked. So ironically, like I was doing, the track, football, like doing those kind of things freshman year into sophomore year. But then I turned 16. It was like, well, it's time to get a job. And so unfortunately, I had to quit all that stuff and start working. And I got really, really lucky. I worked fast food for 2 whole weeks. And, because you got to realize, I mean, I'm guessing it's the same way now. You turn 16, nobody's going to hire you. They're like, so what experience do you have? What references do you have?
Yeah.
And they're like, yeah, we'll call you. Don't call us, And so unfortunately, by some miracle, I got a job at Burger King, and I was putting resumes out everywhere, and got lucky there. But then, like the next day, I got a job at a computer repair shop, and so I put in my 2 weeks notice at Burger King.
Oh, wow.
So that's how that worked. But no, I was always fascinated with technical stuff. You mentioned some really cool things, which I'm excited about that has happened through the years. But really, high school things like that was luck. I was able to get into some really rare classes. I always gravitated to doing what people didn't really do. I was always, and as I'm getting older, it's harder. But I always like to do things that older people did and be the youngest. So I was able, you know what Cisco is? You've heard of Cisco,
Yep.
things like that. I was the youngest person at that time. It was called the Cisco Academy, and it was the brand new program for them. Like it was all experimental, but for me, it worked out. It got me great internships in high school. Like I was working for Charles Schwab in high school.
Oh, wow.
We worked on the computer side, then also was able to hang out with the traders outside of trading hours. So I learned both computer stuff and finance stuff, and then also worked for Cisco. Like wild things that a 16-year-old, 17-year-old should have been able to do. I was able to do, and so I always wore it as a badge of honor, doing something younger than the norm. And it really kind of helped with some of my, you've got to deal with people and you get thrown into the fire because everybody's older than you, looking at like, what is this kid doing here? And so you either step up fast or go back to Burger King.
Yeah.
And so that was a lot of high school, a lot of amazing things. I've got jobs through the school district, doing things like I can't even tell you. There's like a pathway there that seems unbelievable of opportunity, and you don't say no.
Don't say no.
You just don't say no. Somebody's like, well, hey, can you do this technical thing that or what thing that nobody else? I'll give you a chance. You're gonna do it. You say yes and do it, and it just builds to so many bigger things. And it's been an incredible ride just based on that. But looking back, it's funny. I don't think about that time period much, but without it, there would have been no businesses. There would have been no technical career. There would have been no, you mentioned something to me earlier today was we don't necessarily in school learn to learn very well, which really that stuck with me the last couple hours we've been hanging out. And I think that's really school. And those outside activities inspired me to learn or how to learn, taught me how to learn. And so none of that really learning was done in school. It was done in the work experience and the opportunities that came its way. And I think once you learn to learn, you can do anything. But up until that point, high school was a really good time period of transition because I don't think up until that time period I learned how to learn.
Wow.
And yeah, so that was huge.
That's super powerful. What would be, I mean, let's take this since we're here, but what would be your advice now? Boil that down to a first principle for somebody maybe in high school that may be watching this podcast. Like what advice do you have for those younger entrepreneurs right this?
I don't want to get in trouble with my old teachers. But, but honestly, I do think back. It's like I look at those last couple of years of high school, and except for checking that box of, hey, I've got a high school certificate, or hey, I started college and got a college certificates and things like that, it was really not a good use of my time. I think, especially with AI and how quickly things are developing right now in the world and how quickly technologies are moving, I think sitting in a classroom reading about history, or I think history, I love history. History is important, so don't get me wrong on that. But somebody who's never going to use calculus probably shouldn't be sitting in a classroom
Yeah.
learning calculus.
Yeah.
There's so many other things if they can figure out how to learn in things that interest them, and that they can just, it's almost like a wavelength. If they can tune into the wavelength of how exciting things is right now, don't focus on school and good grades. Focus on learning how to learn and tuning into what's going on right now. Somebody who can understand AI and understand what's going on there. At your event afterward, there was a young man that came up to me and said, hey, I'm just graduating school. I know you're kind of an AI expert and things like that. What do I need to focus on? And I told him, I said, if you can, it's not about technology. It's not about being technical. It's about how good are you at managing people? Can you be a good manager? If you can be a good manager, you can be a fantastic AI orchestrator, because you know how to effectively communicate what you want. And you know that the output that comes back to you is, you can validate and guarantee is what you wanted. And if you can do that, which is, if you could go get a supervisory job at Burger King, that's probably great, because if you can learn how to manage people, communicate what you want, and know that they're delivering on what that those values are, and you can validate it, you're going to be fantastic at AI and a lot of these technologies, because that's what it's about. Doing the actual work isn't as important anymore, because that's what AI is doing for us. What the important thing is knowing that you can effectively describe and pinpoint your needs, your wants, what the goals are, and that coming out the other side is exactly what that is. And I feel like that's what running employees, for having great employees, is being a decent manager to understand, hey, I need this, and know that they can deliver it out the other side. And that's what it's all about right now.
I love that. And I think since we're here, let's talk about it. You open the subject of management. One of my things is like understanding the difference between leadership and management. So to me, what do you, I don't want to say what I think first.
Mhm.
I'd love you to hear your opinion on what you think, that what for you is the difference between a leader and a manager inside of an organization.
That's interesting, because especially off the topic that we were just coming from, I think management is managing things like AI and managing tasks. I think leadership is inspiring. If a leader gets somebody to get out of bed in the morning and do one more task for you, one more thing, be bought into the vision, like they are team. They love you. They love the goal. They love the vision that you've put out. They believe in your dream. And in startups, I think that's important, because you're really pie in the sky most of the time. And I really hate the term "fake it until you make it," but that's really that is really the essence of startups.
Yeah.
But it's not even fake it till you make it. It's inspire until you make it,
Mm.
because the bottom line is the odds are against you in starting a business. I mean, it's 50% odds within the first 5 years it's going to fail. You're not going to wake up and be like, oh man, I want to do more today, with thinking it with that in your head. And so the fake is inspire others to believe that, yeah, we're going to make it.
Mm.
And it's almost like a mind, thing, to where everybody starts believing you're going to make it, and all of a sudden you make it. And so I think it comes down to leadership is really being able to carve out that, which doesn't matter with AIs and things like that. AI means you have to be a good manager. But if you're bringing teams and people together and vision, and even people outside your organization, your customers even, they'll stick with you through some really hard times if they're inspired. And I really think that's leadership, is that inspiration piece. Elon Musk, the thing that you see, some of these people out there, some of them are crazy. We've had conversations about it, but people look at them and they've never met them in their life, but they will defend them to the grave, because they believe in this vision and this plan that they've put together. I had a discussion with somebody this morning about some current events, and they're defending this company to their blue in the face. I'm like, but look at the annual reports. It's like, but it's like, no, it's there. This is amazing, and it's just, he said this. It's like, wow, that is leadership. That is that vision piece, I think. And I think I struggle with it sometimes, because I'm very analytical, and I look at, this could go wrong and this could go wrong. But there are some fantastic leadership visionaries out there that it's bigger than it actually that they're envisioning that, and then with enough people believing it, it happens. It's some kind of miracle that it's really fascinating.
I love how you put it, and I 100% agree. For me, the definition of leadership is you're providing vision, influence, and motivation.
Uh-huh.
If you're not doing all three of those tasks, then you're not a leader. And there's nothing wrong with being a good manager because you need good
Mhm.
managers. You need people that know what they're doing and how to get tasks done
Right.
once they're identified, and that you create the structure in the box. But the leadership has to create the vision. And just like you're saying, 100% agree with you that they have to create purpose.
I
Right.
often hear references selling the dream. I
Absolutely.
hear some people, a lot of employees say living the dream,
Yep.
but
And there you
but the
go.
person that we're describing is selling the dream.
Absolutely. And that's, to me, that's maybe that the difference between a good employee versus a good entrepreneur. You got to
Uh-huh.
be able to morph between them, right?
Yes.
Because you have to have a vision, but then you also have to get it done. So somebody that's a founder that founds and starts a business, they have to be able to float between those early and then be
And
able
not
to
get stuck.
and not get stuck. I like that. That's a good segue. Let's talk about maybe some of those early careers because you started super young in your
Mhm.
entrepreneurial journey.
Yeah.
And what was that transition like when you went from being learning at these internships, having these jobs and these learning from these really advanced people in their industries in this new field? What was that transition like for you and what got you over into being your own entrepreneur?
It's funny because they were all big companies, but they had the startup mentality because a lot of them were tech. The thing from Charles Schwab or working with Cisco. The next one after that, I worked for another computer store, and then also um, another start. Well, it would have been a startup at the time period, but an internet provider because that was new for that era, right?
Hmm.
And so they'll take a lot of risk in you when there's not a lot of rules. I mean, that's really the bottom line. And so we were able to take on tasks if you're willing to do them. It's kind of back to the same thing that we were saying early on. Some people be like, "Hey, I need you to do this." Instead of saying, "I don't know how to do this," you figure it out. And it's funny because that figuring it out is, hey, it turned out most of the time pretty good. And you surprise yourself. You really surprise yourself. I always say, so a lot of my career and a lot of my success and things like that, I look at them as happy little accidents. And maybe even that during that time period, I didn't know enough to know I shouldn't have been doing it. These kind of things. I was
Yeah.
too young and stupid to realize that, well, we probably shouldn't put a kid in charge of, this type of project, right? And you just did it because, especially in you're in these startup type mentalities, there's nobody else to do it. And you just become risk, it's worth the risk. Let's task that person. So there was a lot of that through, and that was my last job. But the big problem is if you ever get in a job and then you start thinking, well, I can do it better.
Oh.
And I've mentored and I've seen a lot of young talent over the last couple of years that they start talking about that. Well, if they just did this at my work, it would increase sales. And they bring it up to management and management shoots them down. Like it is just, one time, yeah. After the 10th or 20th time that they get shot down, you start thinking, well, maybe I'm smarter than them. Maybe I can do it better than them. And I see a lot of really good entrepreneurs born because of that. It's almost because they have bad managers or bad owners. You've got these organizations, and that's what's interesting about what you do and things like that is you've got these organizations. They're not bad. They're just old. They're 20, 30, 40 years old, and they have been doing the same thing for 20, 30, 40 years, and it works. And so they always tell that young entrepreneur, well, I've been doing it this way for 20 years and it just works. And things are changing. Things change faster now than they ever have. I mean, the technology things and these legacy organizations is what I'll call them, like to put their head in the sand and be like, oh, well, it's been working this long and I don't need to listen to any change. I don't like change. These young hotshot kids will eat their lunch. I mean, it's been happening for decades and years and years and years. I've seen it in tech, and that's why I had left because I saw an opportunity and saw I could do it better.
Mm.
But it was the same type of thing. After being told, no, we're just going to do it this way. We're just going to, keep doing it this way because it's worked this long. And I watch these young entrepreneurs say that same thing, and they go out and they're killing them. They're killing their competition. They, organizations that haven't been rocked in how many years, digital, marketing, social media. Like they're doing all this stuff that other people are like, well, I don't need to do that. This is what they're killing the legacy businesses. They're just wiping them out because that's the way it is now.
I think that's interesting too because you do have a rapidly changing market environment right now. It's almost just I really the maybe some of the advice right now, maybe also not to the aspiring entrepreneur, but to those legacy business owners to maybe you need to pay attention to some of those young kids, some of the ideas that they're having. Maybe give them a little chance, right? How do you give those ideas chance to flourish? And maybe you should pay attention a little bit more to the people that are on the front lines with the most information. Like there's a lot of that goes on where you try to lead from the top, but you're not doing it right. And the guys that are on the front lines doing the job and they see opportunity, maybe you should pay attention to those a little bit and can give them a little bit more weight.
So actually, at your event, there was a great story of a business owner that transitioned to one of his employees, and I feel like that's what happened. Is the employee came with a lot of good ideas, and he listened. The owner was more of a technician. He enjoyed the work, and this younger employee came with ideas of how to streamline the business, better software, better technology, better way to handle the relationships, and things like that. And he let him start to implement it. And before he knew it, he's like, well, "That's the business." And that employees, they worked out an agreement to where they're acquiring the company. That happens, and that's a great pathway, and the business is bigger than ever and more efficient and better than ever. And I think that it's hard as elder business owners to look at somebody and be like, you know what you're doing.
Yeah,
But in the technology set, they can bring things, I mean, that many legacy business owners aren't even thinking about. It's not even on the radar. Social media stuff or YouTube, paid advertising, like all these little pieces. Today, to really operate a business, you have to be hitting on all cylinders. You've got to be doing social media. You got to be doing logs. You've got to be doing podcasts. You've got to be doing YouTube ads. You've got to be like all of this stuff. Like we're talking 20, 30 technology items just to make sure that you appear everywhere. A lot of the legacy business owners are they're blind to it. And it doesn't take much and it doesn't cost much. Like a young whippersnapper, owner, entrepreneur can come in and implement these things at almost nothing
yeah,
and hit the ground running. And I've seen it firsthand now multiple times where nothing exists. And they build out a complete, especially in the trades, a complete digital persona. And within 3 months, they're doing more business than the person they left.
yeah.
Than the whole organization that they like. It is mind blowing. And it's really easy to become blind to those things, especially if something's been working for 20 years.
Absolutely. Talk to us a little bit about your first business
Mhm.
because you said that was you identified that your ideas were being shot down by management and you were starting to get frustrated and then that you came to a point where you said, "You know what? I think I'm a little bit smarter than these guys.
Mhm.
I think I can do this." What business was that? And how did you start that business?
Again, you know what you don't know, and you don't know what you know, right? And so it was a computer networking technology company. As it was a skill I had. You could repair computers, you could lock them down, do all the maintenances. The internet was just really taking off. Broadband was taking off, so a lot of this stuff can be done remotely. So it looked like the perfect thing. Today, almost every organization pays a monthly contract fee to their IT provider, and it's called managed service. It's the way it is. It's just a monthly fee per workstation, and they take care of everything. Well, back then that didn't exist. We were doing it, and we were doing it for something like $25 a month per computer, $50 a month per server, and we would go in, we would clean everything out, lock it down, so our costs were low, and then they just pay us. And it was pretty good money because it was, we did all the front work on the front end, and it became, what's now known as like a SaaS business. And I was started doing it on the side because it was easy to do on the side. And so you start generating revenue, and then we started growing into things like phone systems. Again, too smart for I thought it was too smart for my own good. We're like, well, computer phone systems are the same thing. Well, they weren't back then. I didn't know that. And so I had sold a couple. I sold about like 4 or 5 companies a phone system. Well, we couldn't program them, and so we got ourselves in a little bind. And so we had another company come in and save us on those accounts. And it turns out that company was not financially solvent. They were having some struggles. And so we're able to merge the two companies and take over that company and make a bigger organization.
Oh, crazy.
So it's just happenstance, like type of thing. And then That was the one I made an exit, the first exit of once we combined those, and we had just about 2004, 2005.
When did you realize that you were going to exit that business, that conglomerate that you built? Like
When I found the next thing.
when you found the next thing?
It's really it's the writing on the wall, and that's what I was saying about these business owners or these organizations that are comfortable. I've been doing this for 20 or 30 years. When we were doing the computer stuff and the phone systems, it was legacy phone systems, not like they are today. Everything works over the internet today.
Yeah.
Back then it did. And so we saw the writing on the wall. We were doing what's called structured cabling too. So we're doing computer wiring. Wireless was starting to take off. The more and more the companies were starting to show up to do our model, which was pay monthly. So that was hurting us on the computer side. We saw the writing on the wall that that's going to go away. Or now everybody wants to do that. The structured cabling is going away because more and more companies were running wireless. And then the phone systems were going to what now we know is voice over IP. And so we had our eye open, like, okay, these are fantastic businesses, but we see the writing on the wall that these won't exist in 20 years. They probably won't exist in 10 because of the new technologies that are coming out. And so that's when we started to look, like, okay, what else can we do to be ready for the next wave? And so we started developing out while these were operating. We were one of the first voice over IP companies. And while we were operating these businesses and they were cash flowing and things like that, we then started work on the voice over IP systems and developed our own. And it's a funny story because I have a habit of selling something we don't quite have working yet. And so we had sold 5 customers a voice over IP system we didn't have. And so they cut us checks, gave us money. Like it was like, okay, we knew we were going to make this work, but let me tell you what a rock that is when you've got money that people have paid you and you've spent it to develop this product and you don't have the product yet. It's a good motivator.
Yeah.
Again, you don't know what you don't know. Probably is not something I would encourage somebody to do, but it is a heck of a motivator. But we did it. We had that product working in 6 months. And once we had that product working, we then sold off the other business and then took off with that one. And that was an incredible ride.
That's incredible. So you identified what your next target was or your next business model was going to be. You built a product, and then as soon as you had that next product built, you sold the base company, which then fed your pocketbook to be able to fund the next venture.
Uh-huh.
That's incredible, and that's like next level too, because it takes vision. You got to be able to see things
And
before
risk.
they're happening.
Yeah.
And risk, yeah, you'd be comfortable with risk, but you're saying, like you saw what you were seeing was forecasting, and you're like, what are the risks in my business model I currently have, and what do I need to go towards in order to protect myself and my investments, my company, my people, like my.
We were able to transition most of the people over.
That's
So even the people that went with the other company, eventually we were able to even hire them back.
wow.
And so that was pretty cool to be able to bring them back, the family back home.
That's awesome.
But it was certainly, but it was even more than that. I mean, during today, you're like, okay, well, voice over IP, yeah, it's just a thing. It's what we all do, our mobiles now, everything. Back then, there wasn't such a thing. And so you would buy phone lines and you would buy a phone system. There was none of this. And so we would go out to sell this product and people would be like, huh? I pay at the time, then it was US West or CenturyLink. Or Quest back then here. And so people will be like, so I have 2 bills. I don't understand. Like just the concept of getting people on the sales side over that. It's like, no, it's all going to go away and you're going to have 1 bill from me. And so it took a lot to get that, to really figure out how to talk to people about something completely different than, it's so weird now because now it's all mainstream.
Yeah.
But back then, like you explain it to somebody, a business owner, and you just watch their eyes roll back in the back of their head, like they didn't follow you at all. It's like just like, just trust me. Just trust me. Just
pay for my service,
right,
pay for this thing.
Right. Just
it's
trust
going
me.
to work.
It's going to work, right? And so there was a lot of just trust me. But no, we took second mortgages on homes we owned. I mean, stuffed money in car pay and like car loans so we could get this off the ground. Like it was definitely a challenging time period because again, it was something that really nobody's ever seen before. And it's funny because the more I've looked back at the different businesses that I've done and focused on and invested on, I try to stay away from those big changes now because it's too much of a chasm.
Yeah.
For a lot of people to get past, and that's painful.
Yeah.
Because you're trying to explain this concept that's so foreign. It could be better for them. It could be cheaper. It could be more efficient. It could give them all these extra things. It could grow their business like 30 or 40%. but it's too big of a jump. People, especially business owners, they see these little incremental changes. And when you come into business with a big change like that, it's harder than you would think. Because I look at it as like, this is a no brainer.
Yeah.
And but then getting people across that concept when they had been buying phone lines from the phone company and the way they've been doing it for 20, 30 years, it's the same thing that we're talking about with the legacy business owners. It is really they it's not that it's bad. They can't wrap their mind around a change that big.
Yeah.
Most of these people have been doing these things 20, 30. They can't wrap their mind about ChatGPT, period. We sat down with another one at your after your event, and he was explaining to me that of their entire board, one person is, and this is a company that's been around 80 years, one person has heard of ChatGPT.
Oh my gosh.
They've got a 8 or 12 person board.
Wow.
And so how do you explain this life altering technology to a group of people where nobody's even, they're just not even aware of these changes that have happened over the last couple of years? Life altering, business altering changes, and they're not even aware of it. So it comes back to the root of that gap of making sure that when you do bring a product to market, that it is just not too wild. Otherwise, it's really hard to sell.
That I think that's an interesting point you make, because it's like so many times everybody's thinking they got a $1 billion idea, right? We're going to disrupt an industry, we're
Yep.
gonna disrupt. But when you say that, and if you truly have something that's disrupting, it is so hard to get that over the finish line. It is so hard. Previous companies I've been part of, it's been educational campaigns, right? Like educational campaigns, yeah, they can be necessary, but they're super hard to pull off correctly, because
And
nobody
construct
and construct.
and get people through it's so much testing. We leverage up. I mean,
Yeah.
to get that through that those initial stages, we leveraged up. And I can tell you what people told us all the time.
Hmm.
Nobody got fired for buying Cisco.
Exactly.
And so that's hard to break through. It could be this life-changing technology or disruptive technology. And it's funny because the saying before that used to be nobody got fired for buying IBM.
Yep. Yep.
And so disruption is a weird thing. Sometimes if it's too disruptive, you can't sell it.
Well, there's a video of Jeff Bezos at a graduation ceremony. He's talking about, conventional wisdom is right 9 times out of 10.
Mhm.
But it's that one time that you step up the bat and you crush it that you can get infinite returns. But you have to. But the problem is that 9 times out of 10 you will be wrong, and that's the hard part to swallow. Is that the inverse effect is you're going to be wrong most of the time, but when you get it right, you can make up for all those losses and then.
Well, and so I don't know if you're familiar with angel investors.
Yeah.
That's their mentality. Like most angel investors, 9 times out of 10, actually the statistics are, I think, 7 out of 10 are failures. 2 out of 10, they either get their money back or they just get a nominal return. And then there's that one that you just hit it out of the park, and that makes up for everything.
Yeah.
A lot of people can't stay the course for that one.
Yeah. And that's the hard thing, is understanding those statistics, right? Because everybody said, well, if I just invested in Amazon when it was starting up, I'd have like.
Do you know
Sure.
how many Amazon failures there were during that time period?
Yeah.
Just like that.
Absolutely.
There are thousands, if not hundreds of thousands.
Yep. Absolutely. So
just like them.
and just to think that you're going to pick the right one is, it may be ignorance or maybe hubris, whatever it is, but it's super hard. And
I think it falls under impossible.
yeah, I mean, it's batting, it's hitting the star, right? So I agree with you there. Now, but talk to me about some of those. Let's go back to your company again. So you have the 3 structures of your business, and you're preparing it to exit. You've got the voiceover IP now operational. Talk to us about how long did that first journey take to go from I'm ready to sell this thing to I sold it to a buyer, and what did you learn in that first process transaction?
So everything was moving very fast for that first one, and it was 3 years.
3 years.
3 years
to sell the business.
Yeah, from us really rolling to actually exiting, it was about 3 years.
Well, the company itself.
The company itself.
Okay.
Yeah. I think I mentioned this on your panel at your event as well. Is it seems like I pride myself on a lot of the operational stuff, the documentation, like things that I find value. What I may find value, you may not find value in. What you find value in may not be what I find value in. And so understanding that there can be a meeting of the minds and not an alignment of ideals. And when you sell a business or buy a business, it's probably a good deal if nobody's happy.
Okay.
But everybody's satisfied.
I like that.
Because if one party is extremely happy, something's not right. And if the other party is extremely happy and the other one, that means the other party is very unhappy. So I feel like there's a balance there because there's a lot of moving pieces here. You've got employees; they may be upset. You've got different conceptuals about what they want to do with the business, which may be different from what you're doing. I mean, there's so many moving pieces here. It's almost like stars in the sky of how many different points of interest to these businesses are. And so I'm going to say during that is it was a tough exit because there was a transition period. During that transition period, they hired people to take over our phones and things like that, and they were working in our office. I was unhappy because of the people that they hired. They weren't at what I would hire, right? But it's not my business anymore.
Yeah.
And they were unhappy because like the call volume started to drop and things like that, and that they weren't as involved in the day to day during the transition. And so there was some discourse over what was going on. We're like, you guys are doing a bad job. I've got statistics and things like that. And they're like, okay, well, it's not what we thought it was. And so we ended up coming back to the table because it was an earnout later at a discount that we agreed on. Just like, okay, because the business wasn't generating 6 months later the same amount of money it was generating when I handed over the keys. But I was unhappy because there's no reason for that. They were unhappy because it wasn't as much money as they were hoping to generate. So we agreed on a discount. The problem is when you sell that business, you can't choose who they hire. You can't choose how they perform. At the end of the day, I felt like it was a fair deal. I feel like, they got a solid business, even if it was down a little bit. And then it's what they paid for. They paid for to take it over and not have my input, and so I think that happens at a lot of acquisitions. I was trying to coach somebody else recently who wants to sell their business. And the concern is can they let go? They keep telling me, oh, well, I want it to be good for the community. And I'm just like, it's not your call. They're not paying you to, for your opinion or for your involvement. They would be paying you to walk away, and it's their baby. And I think a lot of business owners struggle with that concept. And so maybe they take less money and they have a vision for it. There's a lot of different ways that work for that. But I think there's a lot more planning involved as you're getting up to that stage, because I've heard several people also back out of deals because they can't let go at the end. And it's probably because the whole process, and I think the process of selling a business, it does take years. It takes years of planning. It takes years of mental planning, what the expectations are. I mean, there's a lot of pieces. When the LOI comes in, things happen fast, and you don't have time for those kind of things.
Yeah.
Then it's moving. Like the LOI comes in, you're probably going to close out in 90 days, 6 months, the longest case scenario. But that's not enough time for a business owner. They need to be thinking 2 to 3 years in advance and working through a lot of those processes. So when that LOI comes in, they're ready. They're ready to start moving, and everything is action after that versus thinking. The thinking is up to that point. Thinking's got to be over when that LOI comes in, and then your action. And I think that's where a lot of people are not quite in their mind. They want to sell their business because they're done or they're exhausted or they want to go do other stuff, but they haven't done all the homework, all the pre-work to getting up to that point. And so that's kind of how that deal went.
Help the audience here. Talk about what that pre-work looks like. What are some of those steps that they need to go through before they start going through the selling process?
It's a lot. It's different for everybody. But first of all, they have to come up with a number. They have to have that number in their head. Okay, I walk away tomorrow for X.
Hmm.
That's a starting point. Doesn't mean you're going to get it. Doesn't mean anybody else is going to come close. But if you don't have that number in your head, when it comes to closing day, you'll never be able to sign the paper.
Interesting.
So they have to come up with a number. What would it take for me to walk away tomorrow? Just walk away. And then you can kind of do a sliding scale. I'm not going to walk away. I'm going to be here for another 3 years. So I'll take less. Or I want some input in this is what I want it to look like in 10 years, even though I'm gone. Okay, well, you're going to take less. Or I'm willing to do X. And it's a sliding scale. And so I think somebody's got to be willing to operate that scale.
Yeah. Put numbers down on paper and understand what is your number and then what are your ranges below and above and what are you willing and not willing to do
Right.
in those brackets.
I mean, it starts with the number. I will walk away for X. But then when you start adding like ticks to that, you better start bringing that number down.
Yeah.
And then you have to mentally do that. Okay. And when the day comes, okay, I'd walk away for X. Well, you've got that. That's it. Like we're here.
Yeah.
But there's so many other things you've got to do to the business. That's just for an owner to mentally get ready.
Yeah.
You've got to there's financials, there's audited stuff, there's so much you have to do leading up to talking about businesses. And,
Yes.
and so there's a lot of things. And I think you're more of an expert on that than I am. Mine's just been a real world experience. They'll ask you for audits and things like that. And in my cases, the businesses weren't big enough to require that at the different stages and things like that. But you've got to be really detail oriented. You've got to have good financials. You've got like there's so many things years leading up to it. You can't be, oh well, I just put an extra car on that. We bought a car that year and things like that. Like those things have to matter. You have to justify some of your decisions, and you really have to have a good account.
Yeah, absolutely. So you have to be thoughtful and intentional about how you're building the businesses years up to leading to
Yeah.
when you're like ready to sell. And I appreciate how you touched on earlier that a lot of business owners, they'll get to a point where they're tired, exhausted, and a lot of times that's when they have declining revenue
Mhm.
and they're like, well, the juice isn't worth the squeeze anymore, so now I'm ready to sell.
They want to sell it on a decline.
They want to sell on a decline, and that's the worst time to sell because you're putting yourself at the mercy of whoever's going to look to buy you. They're
You're
not.
just yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So, what was one of that going through that process or looking at that first process? What was something that went well, and what was something that you improved on later?
What went well is good financials.
Mm.
That was important, like to the whole thing. Good documentation. Again, I mentioned how we were able to reference call reports and things like that. At that time, that was a new, like people didn't have that kind of data. So having analytics about the like walk-ins, that kind of stuff is just important.
So, data collection was really good. What was something that surprised you in that first deal that you weren't ready for because you didn't know about it, and then but you fixed on the second?
That they just didn't think everything was perfect about the business. I mean, they're walking in, and I'm thinking that they're going to love this. This is great, best thing in the entire world. There's best thing since sliced bread. Like everything here is great. They obviously didn't feel that way on every single So, and that's on every deal.
Yeah.
You're this is your baby. You're like, oh, this is fantastic. Everybody's going to love this. And then you got people in there. This doesn't look up to this line item doesn't look up to snuff. Or why are you doing it this way? A lot of business owners will get offensive,
Mm.
and then they'll ruin the deal
Yeah.
because they'll start
They,
not taking the criticism very well.
they take it personally. Interesting. So all right. So now you've made it to your voice over internet, your IP,
Mhm.
right? Talk to us about that business and what was your mentality in that second business that you used to springboard? Because then you had a third. Like, how did you build that second business differently?
So keeping in mind what was value. Again, documentation was key, process was key. What really you try to open your mind and make sure that what you were focused on is important. Like, because I always like tech. The buyers may not be interested in that. They may plug in their own tech. So you really have to identify what is important to a general group of buyers versus what's important to you. And so I always like, I like running a tight ship. And the buyers are, the group, the merger partners and everything. So like, you guys ran such a good, tight ship. But when it came to our big buyout, our big merger, I mean, like we've talked about in finance a lot, running a tight ship in a good business doesn't mean a good financial exit in the markets. There's different values. There's different value drivers there, especially as you get up in different sizes and things like that.
And what did you find was maybe the biggest value driver for your business? What was it that was different?
We thought it would be the technology, but we ran that company for almost 9 years on our own, and over those 9 years, other people caught up. So the technology became less important. It all became about the customers.
Sort of.
Yeah, customers and revenue.
On the customer base, was it you have like a handful of really premium accounts or was it multiple smaller accounts or what was your strategy when you say customer base?
When you're in a growth business, it's just all about revenue.
Revenue.
Doesn't matter what the customers look like. It doesn't matter do they spend green
Yeah.
in that type of growth business. For us, quality customers meant that they were just going to stick around longer. That's what we really focused on, making sure that we had customers that would stick around long term, and a lot of them were there 9 years.
Oh wow.
And so, but at the end of the day, the roll ups and the mergers and that whole process that started at year 9, they just care about revenue,
Just pure revenue.
just pure revenue. It's all financial play once you get to that level. Top line.
It's all top
It's all top line in the growth business.
in the growth business.
In a technology growth company, everything's top line because tomorrow a new technology can come out and cut the cost in half
Mhm.
or by 99%. And so, it doesn't matter. A lot of those things just don't matter at that point.
Interesting. Okay.
In a core business, though, it may be a little different, trades and things like that. But it really, because if you're merging or rolling up to a bigger company, they're going to have better systems. They're going to have better procedures. They're going to be much more efficient than you. I definitely recommend, and I've done this too, become as efficient as you can. But the assumption is the buyer is going to come in and think that they can do it better and be more efficient, and let them. But if you're already efficient and they're looking at your numbers and things like that, it's a good solid business and they think they can do better, great. But that's really their concept. If you've got a roll up team, which I see a lot of trade stuff going on right now, they're rolling up 20, 30 trade companies, things like that. They're not going to use your systems.
No.
They're not going to use your payroll company. They're not going to use your benchmarks. They're growing the business based on their predefined systems and procedures, and they're going to look at your top line numbers, and they're going to know when they operate it what it looks like.
Interesting. And so that was a 9-year business. So your first one was 3, the second one was 9.
Mm-hmm.
And at what point did you know that you were exiting that second business?
That was interesting because we saw the writing on the wall that we need to be bigger. And so we started negotiations with the company. We didn't know if we were going to buy them or they were going to buy us. So that's just kind of the awkward startup. They were able to acquire some VC funding. And so we merged the companies together. And then I stayed on with them for another year and a half. And then, I was on as an advisor through the sale of that one. And that was a wild ride. I mean, that was just a complete wild ride going from, company that's valued at, somewhere between 10 and $30 million to 300 and the exit was like 365 or something like that. It was just
Oh,
such a
wow.
wild ride. Yeah. In 3 years.
That's awesome.
Yeah. 4 years, but yeah.
Very cool. And that's a big difference. $10 million business is way different than a $300 million.
Correct. It's a completely different skill set.
And what were some of those, if you can share, like what were some of those transitions that you had to make and as a person or, for yourself that you had to adjust from going from a small business to a medium to large business?
Again, my core fundamentals of operating a good business didn't matter as much as growing revenue. Everything's about growing revenue. Sales, everything. So the sales team, when we were operating the business, our sales team was probably the same size as our tech team. When you're talking about a $100 million business, the sales team is 4 or 5 times what the tech team is.
Oh, wow.
And so, it was always core focus and still am on customer service. And they're all about, hey, if it's not a good current, charge them, go sell another one. Turn them off, go sell another one. I'm like, let's keep them in. Let's keep them in. When you start talking about businesses of that size, it's more about turn them off, go find a new one. It's easier than keeping a customer happy. Just turn them off and go get another customer, especially when you have a sales team that large.
Interesting.
Mentality of these bigger businesses. And so that's why people complain when they call 800 numbers or you call your credit card company, they don't seem to care. They don't. Yeah, I mean,
Catching the truth there.
The bottom line is their mentality is it's actually cheaper for them to go out and buy a new customer or get a new customer than it is for them to keep you happy.
Interesting.
And you look at these large enterprises, AT&Ts or, like the cellular carriers, things like that. I feel like they have the same mentality. It's easier to just go get, and it's more exciting to go get new customer growth. Stockholders like it better. Yeah. They see all the new customer growth, things like that, as long as you can keep your churn somewhat under control. Churn is just those customers falling off. But at the end of the day, most of these large organizations have the mentality of, we're going to go get a bigger, better cashier customers. Granted, we lost this 4-person customer. We're going to go ahead and we're going to replace them with a 40 customer. And so I get it. I mean, for me, that's a hard transition because I hate churn. I want to keep everybody and people wrapped up because that was hard work getting them in the door, kind of thing.
Yeah.
So I think that was probably the biggest and hardest thing to get around. Yeah.
You think a lot of that is also like because it's your name, right? Personal reputation that matters.
Smaller, absolutely, yeah, because it can turn into a no-name corporation.
Yeah,
right.
I would, I think that's a pretty real transition, a pretty real change. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah,
that's not something that most people get insight into because there's not a whole lot of people that have access to that. Yeah. That have done that and gone through that.
And I'm not saying any of it's bad. Yeah. It's just the way it is.
It's just the way it is.
It's the only way to get from that growth level of a small, medium to a large business. That's how you get there.
But you have to go through those steps though, right?
And that's why, I transitioned from my role as the CEO to an advisor because that was not me either. Right. And so there's other people and those people can't go out and start a business tomorrow. People that are good at taking multi-million-dollar businesses, $10, $20 million businesses to that $100 million business, they can't go out and start companies. They can't figure it out. It's a completely different skill set, right?
Yeah.
And so there are people like me that can start from zero and get it up to that level. And then there's those people that can get it from that level to just this massive level that's out there. And they're just different people. They're just different ways of thinking. And I don't think there's many, if any, that I know or know of that can do that.
That's fascinating. And because you're right, because that was my next follow-up question is, can somebody use those higher level tactics as a startup or?
No, they don't work. They don't work. If you lose your customers before you get the new one, the dynamics are
Ta-
just so
tactics,
they don't
different
just don't
strategies.
work at all. Yeah.
That's fascinating. I really appreciate that insight.
It was interesting. It was eye opening for me too, because again, I went in thinking I was like, I'm going to change this place, and in
Eh,
reality, it just is a completely different beast.
Different game. That's really fascinating. Okay, so that was your second company. You did that. Talk to us about how did you merge that company? Like how did, because you said it
Hmm.
was you were acquired.
Yeah.
How did you being acquired and merging of these two entities? How explain that process?
So a lot of networking, relationship driven. I mean, a lot of people I think are afraid to talk to their competitors, and it's a must. And nurturing those relationships. I mean, we'd had a 2 year, relationship prior to the actual that all happening. Just friendly conversation, competition.
Mhm.
Everything from I'm going to buy, the joking of I'm going to buy you, or things like that. And there was a number. Like when that was going down, I was probably meeting with 4 or 5 of our competitors at that time period, having those discussions. And we didn't know which way it was going to go anywhere, but it was important we did those conversations. And I think a lot of people get lost in the competition, and your most likely buyer is your competitor. You're most likely to merge and roll up with and go something bigger is your competitor. And I do feel like a lot of small businesses lose that. They all just hate their competitors and they won't talk to people. They talk about them behind their back. I see it a lot, but the bottom line is your best um, companion in something like that is going to be your competitors.
Interesting. And talk to us about how, yeah, like you didn't know how it went, how it was going to go, and you had these like maybe cordial, joking conversations,
Uh-huh.
who's going to buy who. But talk to us about when it really got serious. How did those conversations come about? Were they intentional? Like, what was the tone? Talk to us about
Well, it was
that process.
for us, VC got involved, and
Yeah.
and that's what really started making things serious.
Okay.
Is because there was money now.
Now it's real.
That was real.
Money makes it real.
Money makes it real, and so it had to be put to work.
Mhm.
And so that set a timeline as well.
Got it. So if you're going to merge, maybe would you say it would be good advice to put a timeline on it?
I hate to do that because that sets preconditions, and like
Yeah.
there's a finite. If this doesn't happen tomorrow, it's not going to happen, kind of thing. That's not real.
Not real. Okay. And
Things change rapidly.
yes, they do. Yes, they do. And when you're talking about merging companies, what are some of those things to consider and bring up in the conversation? What are those things that you got to hammer out when you're merging?
So the big thing is that there was an aligning of a vision
Hmm,
that this wasn't the end.
got it.
Because if this was it, and they had no future bigger plan, what are we talking about? Because otherwise it's just the status quo, which is we've got status quo now. Why do we need to do anything here? Because we're all making money. There's growth in the industry. Like there's no like trigger, like, oh my God, if I don't do something by this date, I was going to turn into a pumpkin. There wasn't anything like that. And so really saying, okay, if we do this and we get together, we have a bigger horizon, a bigger hill that we can climb. And so back to what we started with, that vision, selling that dream, selling that vision. And so being able to say, okay, yeah, no, if we do this, we believe that we have the talent and the skills to take it to that something bigger, a bigger plane. And that's really hammering that out is I think otherwise they just have to know is it going to be status quo? What's worse? Is status quo me doing it, or are we working to something bigger? And some people may just want to pay a payout. Who knows? I
Yeah.
mean, it depends on the business owner. Some business owner may not want a bigger. We talked about the 1 in 10 shot. This is a 1 in 10 shot.
Yeah.
A business owner may just be like, I'm fine if I just going to payout. So it just really comes down to the business owner's values and what they're looking for.
How did,
Some of these business owners they don't need it. They've socked away enough money.
yeah.
They're willing to take that 1 in 10.
Yeah.
Some business owners are like, well, if this goes away, I'm broke. So it really comes down to their situation.
Interesting. And how did you go about determining who was going to lead the company? Because it's sometimes when you have too many cooks in the kitchen,
Yep.
thank you, too many cooks in the kitchen, vision and the leadership kind of starts to get muddled, right? How did you go about just determining who was going to be responsible for what in the new thing that came out of this merger?
It was pretty defined. When you have money people in, like VCs and things like that, they'll bring in those players.
Interesting.
So I mean, so you've got your founding team on both sides that just kind of hang around and kind of move to the back a little bit, and then they'll plug in a very public CEO or bring in that talent that it's kind of like an Elon. They're not exactly founders. They didn't invent the product, but they're brought in like a year or two late, kind of. And there's this very high profile. That's exactly what happened. When you have big money come in, they'll plug somebody in, and there's no question.
Yeah, they're bringing in their
They're bringing
team.
not a management team, but
leadership.
Yeah,
And then so the original owner founders kind of take an advisory capacity.
yeah, it's really how that plays out. Yeah, anytime you have a roll up strategy, and I see this a lot in the trades too, they're going to come in with an executive leadership team. That's all predefined. There's no questions. It's just, it is how it is.
Yeah.
So you're either on board or there's no deal.
Interesting. So you have to be ready for that.
You have to be ready. Yeah.
So if somebody didn't have VC money, what would be the conversation that you would recommend those guys have then?
I think that the acquired is probably most likely to step back because there's a reason they're looking to sell and things like that. Again, if there's an exchange of money in your direction, you're taking that money in exchange for letting go. That's really what it comes down. If you're making $1 or $100 million, you're getting compensation to let go. Is really what it comes down to, and so you have to be ready for that. And you're not going to like what they do. I promise you. Like there's no if it, you're going to look at it and be like, well, I wouldn't do that. Like, yes, you may not, but that's what they paid you to sit there and be like, good job. That's what they've paid you to do. And I think that's probably the biggest struggle in this whole thing.
Yeah,
is sitting there and saying, yeah, good job. Yeah, no, I love it. That's what they paid you to do.
Yeah, it's hard to let, when you've been the top dog for so long, you've been the shot caller.
Yeah. Everything. The buck stops here.
Buck stops here.
Yes.
This is everything, and then you're watching somebody else make different decisions, not necessarily even bad or worse decisions.
No, it doesn't have different. Yeah.
Yeah, that frustration could boil to the surface pretty quick if you're not ready for it.
Yeah.
I think that's excellent advice. And this is, I see a common theme that you've been repeating. I'm seeing this. I pick up on patterns. I like this. I like the patterns that we're dropping here. That's perfect. And so, okay, so now you're part of this big monster company, right? And you took your exit after a year and a half, and was that part of like an agreement that you made before you'd stay on for
so I was only supposed to stay on 8 months as an active role, but they ended up having me stay on longer. But then it came to the point to where it's like, okay, I need to go build something, and so I stayed on advising. But that was the max of that whole thing, kind of like a observer, occasional questions came the way, but for the most part, an observer, with a cool title. And then I went off and started something else.
All right, now we're at business 3.
Yeah, which and it's saying it's not all are sexy. I mean, this one looked good. I raised a lot of money for this one. We thought we were going to exit to a really big company, and in the 11th hour, it fell apart.
Interesting.
And an exit did not happen for that one.
For the third one.
For the third one, yeah.
What was the business?
So the business of the third one was it's a tech segment called SD-WAN, basically a fancy firewall, and it's actually still operating in a reduced capacity today because there's still something there, but we went all in. I mean, so first of all, COVID was a huge kick in the pants for that business. And then we went all in on a deal with a really, really big technology player. And we thought they were going to acquire us. Like their gaming division, we spent months proving and got the thumbs up. And then about 2023, December, they said, hey, this all looks fantastic. Thank you.
Thanks very much.
We're like, okay, great. Like, are we still talking about a deal here? And they're like, no, we're actually reducing this division, and then AI can do this now.
Oh wow!
And so we doubled down on it. Because we thought it would have been an insane deal, more insane than any other deal that we put together. And it just fell apart that fast.
Wow!
Business.
Third exit, fourth business.
And so those deals exist out there too, but those are really rare.
And what was that business?
So it was an AI auto attendant, basically.
AI
auto attendant. So they're real common now. I mean, again, that happened so fast. So we were using it internally for tech support and things like that. Basically, you'd call in and have a full conversation and have all access to all your documentation and everything about your company, and it would replace customer service reps. I mean, we went from 8 customer service reps down to 1, all because of that. And then some other company that wanted to get in real fast just came in and just scooped that up and took the customers and everything.
Wow. So how did it? So now your third business, your fourth business, and now you're on your fifth business.
I'm on the next.
How have you changed the way that you build business, or do you have a formula now that, already has the end in mind when you're building? Like, talk to us about your formula for building a business, because you've had amazing success track record at this point.
So back to our segment of where we're talking about not a big chasm,
Mhm.
utilizing things like, so we're on to walkie-talkies now, and you're like, oh, walkie-talkies are old. It's little adjustment. People have been using walkie-talkies forever, so we just modified, basically the technology behind it. It's real easy to use and things like that. So really dialing in just not big changes, and then just re-rolling the same play over and over again. All of these businesses, if you look at them, the sales plan is almost the same.
There's small tweaks on traditional technology
Yep.
to help build incremental value.
Yep, it's all B2B.
All
Um,
B2B.
B2B. I mean, it's just the same plan rolled out over and over again with different tech.
Interesting. And so obviously you've had tremendous success with this plan and this formula.
Yes. Yeah.
So so when you're looking at structuring a business, so Nextel, I see you have one of your
Talking about
your new walkie-talkie right here.
Right. Yeah.
Talk to us a little bit about Nextel and how this business, obviously you're building this masterpiece with all the other previous masterpieces that you've had in your history, right?
Right.
And so now you're on your fifth business, starter founder. Talk to us about what makes this business so special.
So it's similar in a lot of ways to every business before. When we were doing the voice over IP phone systems, we were converting from analog and digital phone systems and computer tech to over the internet. Walkie-talkies are the same thing. They've been analog and digital for 40 years. They never did that transition. So this is basically a walkie-talkie that works over the data networks and things like that.
Interesting.
So it's the same play there. It's B2B focused. So the company that did not have the exit, it was all channel focused, selling through resellers and things like that. So we took that. We're doing that here. So we're just taking little tidbits from every little piece. The AI thing, obviously, there's AI integrations things here. There's a lot of those technologies, a lot of those same code pieces from the AI auto attendant. You can have it. Same thing here. So we've literally taken little chunks of things that worked out of every little business to get here.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
And so now what are you hoping to build with this business?
So the cool thing is, like, when you realize that I've done patents and things like that, I got a bunch of patents and things like that. Not specifically on this, but the other businesses through the years. But to understand that hundreds of thousands of people have used my tech and my businesses and been affected by this, which is really cool. The market for this is bigger than any other player. There's over 1 million businesses in the U.S. that use walkie-talkies, and they're all on the old stuff. And so while we were early on all the other businesses, we're early, but it's such a bigger marketplace. And so we're looking to be able to apply some of those metrics to grow it quicker and bigger and faster than any of the other businesses. All the building blocks are there.
All the building blocks are there for a massive business to be able to help. It's maybe a little disruptive, but not totally disruptive, where you're
Not too big. Yeah.
You're not trying to change too much, but you're
Right.
giving it the layer of advancement that it needs to a segment of the market that needs an advance.
And it hasn't been disrupted at all. Because it's funny, the lower tech stuff, the less it gets overlooked. And when some of my partners in this, we started talking about this, it's like walkie-talkies. And then I started looking around, and everybody's got them. Like, there's walkie-talkies everywhere. And you look at them in a little bit more detail, it's like, oh, that's all old school or toys or things like that. Business utilizing this as a real tool with all the tech that has come before that can be integrated into it. What a powerful tool that could be. And so you look at that. And so, to be honest with you, if somebody really, I don't think tech businesses are for most people, but if somebody was going to start a tech business, find the lowest tech thing you can find and find a way to just, have a path with big leaps, but then slowly introduce those so people can adapt and grab it. Electric cars were a big deal. Like, the thing with that is it was too big a jump for most people.
Yeah.
That's where the hybrid, things like that, they were much more successful than full-on electric cars because it was just too big a leap for people. It's just too big. While it was a novel idea and it made headlines for a long time, it was too big a deal. And even today, you tow an RV and things like that, it doesn't make sense. I think there's a lot of really, really low tech stuff out there that can use just a little bit of, and somebody's gonna look at it and be like, "Hey, why didn't I think of that?" There's just so much opportunity out there right now in that kind of thing.
And for this too, because this is so prior Merchant Mariner, Motorola is the big name in radios, right?
That has been for 80 years.
Yeah, it has been for almost forever. And since radio is a bit of thing. Where do you, like, how do you get these made? Are these made in China that you're bringing them over here? Are they made in the US? Like, what, talk to us about your process for your product.
So everything is made in China as far as hardware. Software is where things get interesting. And so there are other competitors and things like that out there. Everybody's stuff's made in China, including Motorola.
Yeah, absolutely.
The key comes down to the software components. We've developed all the software. We've just developed the operating servers, the servers, like all of this stuff. And that's where people start to break down. There's one thing that I've seen with full software or life cycle development in China. They miss a lot of the finer pieces. We can do better, better with that here. And that's where the opportunity is. So no matter what you get hardware wise, which the hardware is a commodity hardware, there's about 50 different things we could put it on. Our key components and our specialty, our secret sauce is going to come down to the software components. And we've built this, again, stealing tidbits from the other companies. When you have an expectation of a phone system, you expect highly reliable because your business can't be down, your phones can't be down. That logic's never been really applied to walkie-talkies because like, work today, cool. But we've taken those same components where there's redundant data centers and, redundant networks, like all of those redundancies that we've come accustomed to in the data world, we've now also applied to the walkie-talkies.
So who are your best customers that you want to help first and foremost? Who are your most ideal customers for this product?
So ideally there's a lot of contractors, construction workers, security personnel. It's those people who've been using walkie-talkies in some form of their life every day. They're looking to just get to the next efficient level.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. So if you're a business that use walkie-talkies on a regular basis, you should really check out Excel. This is not a paid promotion. So
It could be, yeah, it could be. Yeah.
but no, you really should check out Nexel. It's really cool tech, AI enabled, logging your phone calls, logging,
Oh, it can record, it can transcribe, it can tell you there's so much you can do with it once it goes data. It's crazy.
That's unbelievable. Really, it's a great advancement, great leap forward for radio communication. So I'm pretty excited to see what you're going to do with this. Kind of like wrapping up this segment. You have two more questions I want to get out.
Uh-oh.
One is
these are the hard ones.
Yeah, well,
okay.
Not too hard.
Okay.
But they're very much in your realm of expertise. AI. Everybody's talking about it. What do you see as the biggest opportunity, and maybe what do you see as the biggest myth right now being propagated in AI?
Things always take longer to make it to market than you would expect. So when people are saying, "Oh, all the jobs are going to go away in just 2 or 3 years," I mean, I'm no doubt by the end, 5, 6, 7 years out, we've got problems. But it's not going to happen tomorrow. What is going to happen tomorrow is all the innovation, and it is down to the level anybody can do something.
Yeah,
that's the exciting part right now. Is if you have limited experience. I just saw somebody create a computer, never coded in their life, wrote a whole computer program in 5 minutes.
wow,
A game.
wow.
That's the level we're at. If you can
think it,
and convey it properly, and then monitor the output, you can create anything you want. And so, what the exciting time is right now is for those that want to do more than TikTok. Like you could build an entire business in a weekend.
Wow.
Technology, business, like anything. Like that's really the struggle is most people don't know the right questions they should be asking. They're not asking enough questions. And do you remember Iron Man?
Oh yeah.
Okay, so we have Jarvis now. Like, if you sit around 10, 15 years ago when the movies came out and be like, man, if only I had a Jarvis, man, what could I do? You've got that in your hands. It'll talk to you. It'll walk you through. And it blows my mind that people are still not realizing they have Jarvis and they can create anything and do just about anything with little to no skills. And you don't need people. You don't need employees. You could do it watching Netflix sitting on the couch. And that's what's such an exciting time for that right now.
That's awesome. So the low barrier to entry to create
a business,
to create value for people. You have such a valuable tool on your phone, in your pocket, and it's ready to go. So that's the opportunity.
Yeah. And the sky is the limit. The limitation is what you can't think of what questions to ask. Yeah. And that's wild to think about. That's the limitation.
So really limitation is not being
your creativity, your imagination.
Imagination. Mm-hmm. So we'll go ahead. We'll kind of wrap up this segment with
what was the other question then?
This question. This one coming right now. It's coming right now. Is your exiting journey, right? Multiple times, you've gone through this, multiple evolutions. Mm-hmm. You keep getting better and better and better. But if you could boil this down, the process of building and exiting a company into first principles, you got a maximum of 3 first principles. What would be number 1, 2, and 3?
It's really different for a lot of different people. But the big thing is for those that are starting a business today or those that own a business, especially with what we just talked about with AI, don't think that you can't do the next thing. A lot of people get stuck on, well, if I'm not doing this, I don't know what I do next. With what we've got at AI in our pockets and everything else, I mean, sky's the limit. You can wipe the board clear and start a better thing
Yeah.
if you didn't have the burdens of your day to day thing. And so that would probably be the for biggest item is a lot of people when I do talk to them about selling their business or exiting or starting a business, they're like, "Well, I don't know what I do next." Don't worry about that. There will be more. And then number two would be really plan. You just really have to plan. Get past the idea that there are lifetime businesses anymore. With how quickly things are moving, you're not going to start a business and run it for 30 or 40 years. I mean, Sears, there's every business that I know of going back hundreds of years in the US, most of them have a start date and an end date. There's very few that have been running for hundreds of years. And there are very few, if none, that will run hundreds of years. And so, as long as you go into the business knowing there is a start date and there's an end date, you should be in control of those versus letting the markets and time and technology be in control of those things. Know that. And it takes a lot of fear away from, well, what if I get rid of this or what if I'm not doing this anymore? It may be out of your control and that may happen. So plan appropriately and be in control.
So, first one was don't be afraid of what comes next. Embrace what comes next. Second one was plan ahead, plan early.
Everything about it, yeah.
Everything about getting your house in order, making sure you're
That's so
prepared,
important.
make sure that you're mentally ready for somebody else to lead your business
Uh-huh.
that you've started and founded.
Yep.
And then the third one is understand that the business has a start date and an end date and be in charge of both.
Be in control.
Be
Yeah.
in control of both of those. Take back control. I love it.
Yep.
So that was a fantastic episode. We could probably sit here for another few hours, probably just chatting about this, but I'm going to be respectful of Erik's time. I know I've got tons of value out of this. I know you guys have too. And with that, I say, Erik, thanks so much for
Awesome.
being here.
Alex.
We'll put a link to all of his socials and and his businesses in the description below. Again, if you are a business that needs a radio service, you use radio services often, then you need to check us out because this is new technology that's going to help you better your operation and make it more profitable and professional. So you need to check this out. Links in the description below. And with that, thanks so
Awesome.
much.
Thank you.